Well, hello and welcome to Unfiltered here on SABC 3 and channel 404. I'm Desiree Chauke. Tourism, a key driver of South Africa's national economy. The industry is a major contributor to the South African economy. It has a higher prospect for employment and job creation. The sector also contributes about 9% to the country's gross domestic product. Safety and security is top of the agenda for most holiday makers, but crime remains a major drawback when it comes to tourist perceptions about South Africa. Our question tonight: how can we change perceptions that South Africa is an unsafe destination? We're unable to read your social media comments today as we're not live, but you may still interact with us on the show on social media using the hashtags at SABC News Unfiltered and SABC News Online. Let's welcome our guests now. Christelle Groman is the Director and Tourism Specialist at the organization BDO. We also have Susan Mare, who is a board member of the Tshwane Tourism Association. Welcome. And the General Manager of Menlyn Park in Pretoria, Olive Ndebele. A very good evening to you, Olive. And she's joining us from our Pretoria studio. And Akanksha Malik Naya, who is the Deputy Director, Tourism Safety at the Department of Tourism and Economic Development in the Western Cape. She's joining us via Skype. A very warm welcome to all of you. Akanksha, perhaps let's start with you, especially from a governance point of view. Just give us the latest stats in terms of tourism in South Africa. On the economic front, South Africa has been getting downgrades. Are tourists flocking to South Africa?
Okay, thank you so much. So tourism is definitely, like you said, a driver of the South African economy. In fact, if you just look at the Western Cape, tourism is growing 5 times faster than any other sector within the economy. So if you're looking at the stats, you're looking at about, I believe last year, South African economy, 9% of the GDP was driven by tourism, and about 9.5%, which is almost 10% of jobs are actually driven by direct and indirect tourism. So tourism is a huge part of the economy. Tourism is also the answer to our employment. Tourism is something that is, and especially the Western Cape, where we have quite a few attractions, it's a prime focus for the government.
There's always that conversation, though, that even though it generates employment, a big chunk of that employment is seasonal and not sustainable.
Not so, actually not so, because we do, and another thing that we find in the Western Cape, for example, you have the winter months, and the winter months generally bring more rain, and that is also hampered the tourism. However, it is about the way that we are marketing, it's about product development, it's about destination management, and if we have those things, then there shouldn't be a reason why tourism is very seasonal. Obviously, it will be more seasonal because December is the holiday season, and more tourists visiting our shores. However, what we find is that domestic tourism increases during the course of the year, whilst the international tourism is more towards the beginning of the year, and like January to March or so. And also, in fact, you're finding a lot of international tourism also in the winter months. So not necessarily that it's seasonal. It is about how we manage tourism industry.
Susan, you're from the Tshwane Tourism Association. Give us a sense of the difference between national tourism initiatives, provincial tourism initiatives, and city tourism initiatives such as yourselves.
Desiree, I think it's very important for cities to also encourage and focus on tourism a lot. Every city has something completely different to offer, and that is one of the beautiful things of our country. As the Tshwane Tourism Association, we believe we have so many amazing products right here in our own city, and we want to encourage people to travel local and to have local experiences. We have so many people coming into Pretoria, spending one day and then going to Cape Town or Kruger, which is wonderful, but we have world-class facilities right here in our own capital city. From nature reserves to restaurants to amazing shopping flagship malls. Yeah. And it really, we live in tough times. Not everybody has the resources to go on a massive national holiday.
Absolutely.
There are so many amazing things to do right here on your own doorstep.
Crystal Groman, BDO is an advisory firm, but you have a section that deals specifically with tourism, and you also generate tourism-related research.
Yes.
What are the latest numbers?
So if you look at the numbers, unfortunately, we haven't had a good year. Numbers are out up until August. So if you compare January to August this year to January, August last year, the numbers are down. For overseas tourism, they were also down last year. Domestic tourism is down. So it's
The
not
story of South Africa in
big declines.
2019.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's things that have been coming for a while. So it's causes such economy has been quite a tough economy. So therefore, in respect of domestic tourism as well as business tourism, and I think the data from Western Cape indicated that there is a need to understand that leisure tourism is one part, but tourism is not only about holiday. We have a very big business tourism market, so meetings, association meetings, very large meetings to a lot of smaller, absolutely, the conference market right across the country, also obviously in the capital city, but right across smaller destinations, so even rural destinations have more local conferences that are also important to those economies.
But it's holiday time now.
Yes.
Are South Africans get up for holidays? Is it something they do?
It is, and more so. But I think it's also for us to understand that if we're going to attract the local market more and more and make them to, because I don't think often they understand. I think sometimes we must change it to a visitor economy rather than a tourism economy, because we all understand visitors and we understand how to host visitors, because we get visitors home and we understand we're going to go home and visit. And actually all of those that go home on the holidays are visitors, because they're bringing money from where they're earning it and they're taking it and they're going to do things. They're going to go to restaurants, they may go to actually tourism establishments while they're there. So to get those numbers up, we all have to work together to be able to look at the industry as widely as possible, because it is quite complex, and if we don't focus only on leisure or only on business tourism or only on business travel, that's very related to the economy, then we can have more of a cross-section and therefore have more of a consistent, rather than that you talked about a seasonal.
Olive Ndebele, you're the general manager at Menlyn Park, and malls are such an important aspect of holiday time and attracting tourists. What sort of programs have you got underway?
So thank you very much, and I'm happy to be on your show this evening. And what I do want to say is that as a large format retail, not only do we employ a lot of people, but we also have access to a lot of customers, both local people that are coming to shop and tourists. So our involvement with Tshwane Tourism Association and SA Tourism is to collaborate and have stakeholder relationships in a way that we can make that socio-economic impact. We provide jobs as a shopping center, but when the tourist companies themselves come and do an expo in a mall like ours, they get access to so much more customers than what they would get, in an office environment, and therefore giving them that large exposure to getting more business and being more profitable, also getting an opportunity to employ a lot more people, and also to support the associated industries, health and beauty, recreational, transport that is associated with tourism, so that together we can actually make an impact to the economy and even reducing unemployment in our country.
All right, we're having a conversation about tourism, especially local tourism here on Unfiltered, just to help you make those holidaying decisions easier. Let's take a break. We'll be back in a moment.
Because it seems like the soft rain, but it can be dangerous.
Yes, it can. So what happens is it starts off softly. So there are moments for an hour or 2 hours where the rainfall really falls really hard.
Mark Ketla, a very good morning to you. What are you witnessing out there?
As you can see, this is Yakske River in Sidreda, Alexandra informal settlement.
We've got issues with cars that can't drive here.
Usually when it rains like this road really becomes problematic.
Current situation in the Centurion area is that 10 people were rescued when they had been cut off by the water.
This amount of rain is not something we could have prepared for.
Animal conservation as a whole, for generations to come, that is very important, is to get people aware of animals, get them aware of conservation and the various aspects of tourism.
If anything, I think people just need to start taking global warming seriously because it's affecting our planet, it's affecting our animals.
I saw whales for the first time in my life, things that you only see on television like are realized here. I mean, giraffes, a whole nature reserve, so I've just had the best time of my life.
The people are friendly. It is clean and it has such great scenery and whales, guys, and penguins. I mean, you never get to see that.
Yep, there you go. You didn't think South Africans travel, did you? And that's the demographic for traveling, Christelle, isn't it, in South Africa?
Absolutely.
How
very
much
diverse.
emphasis do we give, as they were saying in the clip, to animal conservation?
We do. So it's a very core product for us in our tourism industry. And in the recent months, so for the last year or so, the South African Tourism Association, together with South African Tourism and together with the Department of Tourism, have been developing a tool to basically look at animal interactions and how do we do that in the best way. The gentleman talked about we must look after this and global warming, etc. So the international industry is the social media is very strong about how do we interact with our animals and is it in a good way and do we ride them and do we touch them, etc. So now there's a tool that basically says we understand our conservation, we understand what we need to do. This is a homegrown tool and both the tourist individual as well as tour operators can use it to say, is this an interaction that we should have and is this something that our tourism industry that comes into it will actually encourage. Yeah. So yes, we take it very seriously and I must say this is the first tool ever to be developed by a tourism association of a country. So we've actually quite in the forefront with that.
Susan, when you see Tshwane Tourism Association, you think the city, but your tourism attractions include wildlife, don't they?
It does, absolutely. Tshwane has, as a matter of fact, we have the only Big 5 free roaming game reserve within city limits in the world. And we are very proud of Dinokeng, and it's one of our big focuses is to promote our beautiful game reserve right there. We have amazing parks, wonderful nature reserves. Tshwane really has everything for people who want to get out.
How do you incorporate the conservation story?
I think it's very important that we collaborate all the time. I own a small business myself, and I think for small business and big business to collaborate and to work together all the time, share information, share ideas, which is also something that we did at the recent Mainland Tourism Expo. Yeah. And it gave small business a wonderful opportunity to collaborate and to work with big business to make use of these tools and to share information and go forward that way.
Akanksha, in the Western Cape, what sort of emphasis is given to looking after the environment while encouraging tourism?
Absolutely, that is one of our prime products and offerings. I mean, in fact, the Western Cape, we want to make it a green economy. We have our own department of economic development. We have a green economy, which is encouraging businesses and facilitating the ease of business within the Western Cape as a green economy hub. So with that as a prime focus, and this is not even a tourism focus, this is a whole focus on its own, a whole sectorial focus that we have. with that, conservation, or if you call it green economy, all of those things are very important for the Western Cape, and we focus on that. And then that filters through within the tourism industry as well.
Olive, please just tell us how your establishment incorporates the discussion of the green economy and looking after the environment as you think about how you attract tourists to your establishment.
So we pride ourselves with being a level 4 Green Star rating, and we're the first mall in South Africa to have such an accreditation. And in our green initiatives, not only do we look at the lighting footprint, but we also have things like a composter, so all our wet waste actually is made into compost, which we then donate, to the soup kitchens. And we also harvest rainwater. Our air conditioning system and our escalators are all energy efficient. We have all sorts of other initiatives, we'll take the whole evening, just talking about it. But it is important for us that we look after our environment, such that it is sustainable, and we do leave a legacy behind for our youngsters.
So let's move on to one of the most important aspects of tourism in today's South Africa. It's our question for today, where we're asking our viewers, how can we change perceptions that South Africa is an unsafe destination? And I'm going to come back to you, Olive, about this one, because malls are one of the biggest touch points in terms of tourism experiences, and they're also one of the places where there's bigger concern for theft, for crime. What plan have you got in place particularly for this festive season?
So this festive season, we always have exciting things in mainland, but I do just also want to re-emphasize on the tourism expo that we had. I feel like I didn't talk about it and expose it as much as I could. That the tourism expo, we saw up to 35 SMMEs that had an opportunity to showcase themselves. This festive season, we've got the Zip Zap Circus. And the Zip Zap Circus, again, looks after children that would have necessarily been street children with no skills. So those skills of entertainment actually assist to expose them to make a living for themselves, and also does give them an international exposure as well. We'll also have an ice rink with the theme of Disney, and that will entertain the young children. Of course, when the young children are entertained, the parents are in the center. And we've got the carols by candlelight. We will have orchestras here, as well as other entertainers. You talk about security. Security is a very important aspect to us for our shoppers. So we utilize very advanced surveillance technology, which I obviously cannot disclose, more details to you in the interest of public safety. We are also very closely related with the police, the local police, as well as other security companies, to make sure that we mitigate crime as best as possible for our shoppers.
All right, we need to take a break. We're going to come back and continue on this tack about security for tourists in South Africa and at the different tourist touch points. You're watching Unfiltered. Let's take a break. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. It's that time of year when you're thinking about your holiday. Actually, you're probably not thinking about it. You're probably on it already, but it doesn't hurt to know what your options are. My guests today, Christelle Groman, Director for Tourism Specialist Organization, BDO. We also have Susan Mare, who is the board member of the Tshwane Tourism Association, as well as General Manager of Menlyn Park in Pretoria, Olive Ndebele, who's joining us from our Pretoria studio. And we also have joining us on Skype, Akanksha Malik Naya, who's the Deputy Director for Tourism Safety at the Department of Tourism and Economic Development in the Western Cape. Akanksha, let's come back to you about safety for tourists in the Western Cape. This is a big issue.
Absolutely. So this has been a big issue within the tourism industry, and it's actually just a big issue for even citizens as South African citizens. So what our department did, the Western Cape Department of Economic Development and Tourism, within its tourism directorate, we have dedicated a whole unit on tourism safety. So this has been going on for about the past 2 years. We have developed a strategy. It's a proper 6-lever strategy, which takes it takes into cognizance the industry, the tourism industry. What do they want? Listening to the industry, reading proper research, the world research on tourism, on safety issues, whether it is then technology, looking at technology as an enabler of the solution, because technology on its own cannot possibly be the solution to the problem. But looking at technology as an enabler to the solution, and most importantly, looking at partnership. How do we now partner with its National Department of Tourism as government? How do we speak in a unified voice? How do we partner with the civil society? Because there's so many hiking clubs, biking clubs, or just citizens that are so much aware of what is going on in the ground. So we've got a lot of partnership going, and then a communication strategy, which I can actually go further. We've got communication strategy going on how do we also interact, not only within the confines of South Africa, how do we interact with international tourists? How do we bring those trade and investments up? How do we respond, like the lady earlier said, conference goers, because tourism is not just leisure tourism going on holiday. It's leisure, it's business tourism. How do we get those more businesses? How do we get more trade agreements? How do we get more investments into South Africa? So that's where we've got a unified communication strategy, speaking specifically on safety. This is not just a tourism strategy. I'm speaking on specific tourism safety strategy. And most importantly, we're looking at a law enforcement angle, that you need to actually have more visibility on the street, and more visible, more cops, more visible in tourist areas, like tourism hotspots. So we are also, which I can definitely go further in as we go ahead.
Absolutely. Susan, Akanksha was talking about the deployment of technology, and one of those technologies is CCV TV that has been deployed in the Tshwane city. Does this help at all in curbing crime?
Does, and I believe technology gives us a big advantage going forward, and it's growing and improving every day. But Desiree, I actually want to touch on the human element as well, and maybe it's a good reminder for all of us, and hopefully for all of our viewers as well, that you know what, we have amazing technology, and I want to talk in my capacity as accommodation provider. We do everything we can, all the, I want to call them minimum standards, the electric fences and the CCTV and the armed response. But as humans, we also need to take care of our tourists and maybe remind all of our countrymen these holidays, whether it's local tourists that you can see are a bit lost in your town, or especially international tourists. And I can tell you, I see so many tourists coming in being terrified. I had a guest the other day tell me that they have to be indoors by 4 o'clock because the taxi driver at the airport told them that at 4 o'clock, I don't know what happens at 4 o'clock.
So a need for education there.
By the time they checked out, they were amazed. They said they can't wait to send their family and their friends. We have a great offering, and we as individuals need to not just rely on the technology, but to take care of our tourists and our visitors.
Crystal, research says South Africa is hamstrung by issues of security and crime in the tourism space. What's research telling us in this regard?
So it definitely is an issue that comes up over and over again. So if you speak to SAT at the most recent World Travel Market, it was probably one of the main elements that was discussed, other than the unabridged birth certificates and when that was going to change. Safety and security remains there. If you look at the Tourism Business Index that BDO prepares on behalf of the Tourism Business Council of South Africa, the main element there is safety and security after economy. So comes on over and over again. And it's not just for international tourists, it's also for local tourists. But I want to talk maybe a little bit about that human element and also just about messaging. So I think, we have to understand that it is an issue. We can never shy away from it. We should never not talk about it. We should never not say, no, it's a safe destination and it's a whatever, that we don't have it at all and we don't have crime issues at all. We have to say we deal with it. Many other destinations do as well. And they all have measures, etc. And this, how do we deal with that better? How do we deal with the communication? How do we get those messaging, consistent messaging out there that will help tourists so that we put information up and not shy away because we may tell them it's an unsafe destination if we put safety information in to say, if something happens, here's a contact number, here's a whatever. If you feel uncomfortable, you could do this, and you may just be able to get some information. So there's a lot of that. There was a recent meeting of many national stakeholders that took place in Cape Town, just happened to be in Cape Town, led by the National Department of Tourism about safety and security after we've had some incidents. And so there's still a national strategy that is being put together, that we're looking at this more closely, that is a continuous strategy to deal with this.
But Christelle, you're talking about if you feel uncomfortable. Susan, sometimes this discomfort is not coming from an external source. I mean, one of the major tourism stories that didn't work for South Africa was of foreign tourists who came into South Africa and the husband killed the wife. And another one is from local tourists where a famous actor's wife died in a B&B and it's still questionable as to whether she died of natural causes or whether she was killed by her husband. As a small to medium enterprise in this sector, how do you control what your tenants do as soon as they go into their rooms?
We can't. We take care of our guests, we have all the security measures, but what they come in and do here, there's not much we can do about. What we can do is the way we treat them, the way we take care of them, and the stories my guests come back with time and time again. I had a guest the other day that left something behind at the Union buildings, and the car guard looked after it for him.
And they were able to retrieve it.
And they were able to
call them tenants. I think it's guests and visitors.
Yes.
Okay. On that note, we're going to take a break and say goodbye to our SABC3 viewers. If you'd like to continue taking part or watching this conversation, please join us on SABC News Channel 404 on the other side of the clock.
We believe that the fourth industrial revolution can change things for us.
We can do telemedicine. Now that means that over a long distance or any distance, I don't have to go and visit a doctor. I can actually see the doctor online.
In Africa, we don't have sufficient doctors. In Africa, we don't have sufficient clinics. It actually makes sense.
Wi-Fi and 5G technology formed some part of the conversation that took place right here.
5G, of course, has the advantage of better experience and also the high efficiency when it comes to the cost per bed.
We haven't issued spectrum in the last 10 years. We have 4G today, which we have had to harvest spectrum from other technologies to be able to get 4G, and now it's costing us a lot more money.
Many, if not most, small medium enterprise businesses are making technology their own businesses.
On Network every Sunday at 8:30 p.m.
Welcome back. You're watching Unfiltered. We're asking how can we make, or rather improve perceptions of South Africa as an unsafe destination for tourists and travelers. That's our discussion here tonight on Unfiltered as we try and help you navigate the holidaying season. And our guest, Christelle Groman, Director at Tourism Specialist Organization, BDO. Also Susan Mare, who is a board member of Tshwane Tourism Association and General Manager of Menlyn Park in Pretoria, Olive Ndebele, and also Akanksha Malik Naya, who is with the Western Cape Tourism and Economic Development Department in that province. Olive, let's start with you as we come back in this hour about malls and safety and security for tourists who come into South Africa, because as I said earlier, this is one of the important touch points for tourists.
So as a shopping center, what we also have is the Welcome Center. Again, another first for South Africa in terms of malls. We're a large format mall, so this area really has a dedicated parking area for tourist buses and just a welcoming to them to the shopping center with security, as well as just facilities for them to unwind, and then they get escorted into the shopping center. This facility is also officially a SA police contact point. So this improves police visibility in the shopping center and therefore also increases safety and security for both our customers and the tourists. It is very important for us as well as a shopping center, as well as the tenants. By the tenants, I mean the actual stores themselves, to be security conscious and to constantly communicate messages to both ourselves and the police to report any criminal activity or any suspicious activity so as to reduce crime statistics, within the shopping center in itself. We are associated with various institutions, including Business Against Crime, in order to just feedback and share information on both incidents as well as ways in which we can mitigate crime.
Akanksha, the perception that you have to be a certain LSM group to afford to holiday in the Western Cape, is this true?
Oh, no, not at all, not at all. Western Cape tourism has such an offering. We have the mountain, we have the sea, we have the nature. You just look at the Cape Nature Park, the plant parks, the Table Mountain. So absolutely no, that wouldn't be a correct assumption in terms of perception and all. Something that I also want to touch on is that speaking of communication earlier on how important communication and it is to manage perception of tourism and tourism safety.
Yeah.
And that's been one of the paramount that we have now done in our communication strategy. We have engaged with the industry, and we have engaged with, so the industry is our avenue to hear about what are they getting questions on. So what we have done is that we have actually released safety tips, which we widely circulate across the Cape, and in fact, even nationally. And we have released things like safety FAQ, because through a few incidents that have taken place, like the ones that you mentioned, there's a perception of crime than the reality. Because whilst there is crime in South Africa, it is not necessarily drawn within the tourism hotspot, the tourism area. And that perception also needs to be addressed and to be mitigated and negated. And so with that, with the safety FAQs that went out to the trades, that went out to all the tour operators, all the traders, bring in all the to get the right safe messaging and the right good news out the market, so that they actually understand what are the good initiatives that are being done to combat the safety of the safety of the region. And one of the repeated programs that we actually have is a 24/7 assistance that we provide to tourists in distress, to international tourists in distress. The tourists, especially an international tourist, is very vulnerable when they go into a new country and something happens. It's not even
absolutely
the victim of crime. We're saying that, let's say they fall down a mountain, or they have like a experience, they have a motor vehicle accident, they start veering off to the wrong side of the road while they're driving. So what do they do then? Most often international tourists don't even speak the same language, or they don't have insurance, or like basically they don't have cell phone number, South African cell phone number.
Yeah.
So in moments that goes, we have a team across the province that assists tourists in distress 24/7 and goes and arranges almost full safe process and arranges hospital visits, assist them with short-term accommodation, assist them with visits to the hospital, And it's just in this program that the Western Cape government we've been running for the past 10 years. So that's the kind of things that yes, incidents happen. And also, in fact, our stats show that most incidents are not criminal incidents. Most incidents are, tourists just being in distress because, they have created, they were in the side, they did, And when incidents happen, how do you make that shock away? And how do you make it comfortable, make it better for them? How do you make that tourist want to come back? And we constantly have good stories. My team is constantly getting, whether it is reach cards to flower baskets to anything, just to thank them for the above and beyond help that they did. They did provide the tourist industry, but how many tourists actually come back? In fact, we just had last week a Dutch couple that experienced the harm, and they've come back.
Susan, these initiatives that Akanksha is talking about, how do we educate the tourist on how to access these necessary initiatives?
I love that question. I think you read my mind, because I think another really important factor in securing and making our visitors feel safe is to give them the right information. First of all, enabling our tourism products to all have a certain minimum standard, and we have associations like the Tourism Grading Council of South Africa and many others that do that. And then second of all is giving our tourists that information to go to the right places, to go to the legitimate, amazing experiences, not use any random, whether it's a taxi on the street,
because people can want to be adventurous sometimes.
Yes,
only to their own peril.
Right places, and that's something that we as Tshwane Tourism Association, we also have a visitor-facing website for people to see these are the right places. In Pretoria, we even have something called the Ultimate Pretoria Bucket List, which is a great resource for people to see things that is safe, is consistent, and they can visit.
How many items are on the list?
Between 80 and 100. So it's the top things.
Oh,
yes,
wow.
Yes.
Are they exciting though?
They are very exciting.
Yeah.
From restaurants,
give us a sense.
From Big 5 game reserves to jumping out of a plane.
Yeah.
From a cocktail with the best view in Pretoria to the best kiddies playgrounds. And I think for our locals and our visitors to show them the best we have to offer, where they can feel safe and enjoy themselves.
Akanksha, we know that when you go to the Western Cape, there's the mountain. What else is there?
Oh, there's the beach, there's the nightlife. In fact, every time I step into the CBD, having lived here for so many years, I'm shocked by how many offerings there are. There's obviously the historical and the cultural aspect for it. We have obviously the Robben Island, and that's what I mean by the cultural aspect of it. But also something that is now a new developing product is in partnership with the National Department of Tourism. We have the Cradle of Humankind, and we've got now in the Western
Cape.
So the Humankind is obviously the Cradle of Humankind.
Okay.
And now they've got the actual culture began in the Western Cape. So this is our latest offering that they're developing, which is the Cradle of Human Culture. Because of all the caves and stuff that have been found, they found that the very first element of culture, of human civilization and actually living together, can be found in the caves of the Western Cape. So along with that, so we have all of that. Obviously, we have the hiking and the nature.
Yeah.
Nature is huge in Western Cape, especially during summer months when it's
But
glorious day.
just to come in there, Akanksha, you touched on something I wanted to ask you. How you collaborate with the different provincial tourism bodies when a client is from Europe, for argument's sake, but doesn't only want to experience Cape Town, and they want to have different touch points in the different provinces. What sort of collaborations do you have there?
Okay, there are so many that shouldn't even be a question, because as government, we are operating as a unit. I personally, in fact, as heading up tourism safety in the province, I sit in the Tourism Safety National Colloquium, and we share ready information where all the provinces are represented, all the destination marketing organizations for all the provinces are represented. And so we readily share information. In fact, tomorrow itself, the National Department is hosting a tourism safety very urgent meeting.
Yeah.
Early morning, shall be stepping in. So that's not even in a question. I mean, as provinces, as government, we definitely join hands and we try to do things and try to readily share information wherever we can. So,
Susan, do you find that you're able to make that transition seamless for your visitors so that they feel like they still have one host all along the route?
Absolutely, I think so. I've personally, I don't know what the statistics show, but I've been seeing a rise in self-drive tourists that come to one city and sometimes don't even book before the time.
Yeah,
they come to one place and decide where they're going to go next and decide how long they want to stay, depending on how entertained they are.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a challenge to us as cities and as provinces to keep them longer. But in the end, we all win, whether they stay or whether they go. When they see a lot of what our country has to offer, without fail, I think
it's part of the short-lived experience throughout the country.
Exactly.
All right, we're having a conversation about tourism and how we can help you make your holidaying decisions easier here on Unfiltered. Stay with us. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in a moment.
We believe that the fourth industrial revolution can change things for us.
We can do telemedicine. Now that means that over a long distance or any distance, I don't have to go and visit a doctor. I can actually see the doctor online.
In Africa, we don't have sufficient doctors. In Africa, we don't have sufficient clinics. It actually makes sense.
Wi-Fi and 5G technology formed some part of the conversation that took place right here.
5G, of course, has the advantage of better experience and also the high efficiency when it comes to the cost per bit.
We haven't issued spectrum in the last 10 years. We have 4G today, which we have had to harvest spectrum from other technologies to be able to get 4G, and now it's costing us a lot more money.
Many, if not most, small medium enterprise businesses are making technology their own businesses.
On Network every Sunday at 8:30 p.m.
Here at Mala Mala, with the area of land that we have, with the enormous river frontage that we have, with our proximity to the open border with the Kruger National Park, we have incredible game viewing.
There's nowhere else in the world where you can have the Big Five and the white shark and the whale in one day.
I would, from now on, no more popping bottles in clubs. It's straight to the game reserves and just having fun and just getting closer with nature.
Well, how cute is that? Welcome back to our discussion here on Unfiltered about tourism and your holidaying decisions. Let's welcome back Olive Ndebele. She is the General Manager at Menlyn Park. Olive, what kind of collaborations do you have with tourist organizations about how to make that experience seamless between accommodation and shopping experiences, and especially for South Africans who might not necessarily be going away, but they still want to feel like they're in the holiday season?
We live in a beautiful country, and I think just with the few opportunities that I've had to leave the country, the one gift that I would like to give each and every South African is at least one trip out of South Africa. So with that as a shopping center, first of all, we've got quite a variety of travel stores. So where you can book your travel, and also the association with Tshwane Tourism Association is really a great collaboration, which opens ourselves to dialogue, with various entrepreneurs in that field. We also spread our wings, further into the continent. Our geographical location, being on the N1 highway, but also connecting to Limpopo, the Northwest Province, and in Mpumalanga, it's actually in our best interest to advertise in those other provinces, but not only that, but beyond the borders there. So our collaboration with SA Tourism also offers us the opportunity to advertise the shopping mall not only as a destination for tourists, but to say when in South Africa, and especially when in the Jacaranda city, do visit both the shopping center and therefore in that way also exposing, the different tourist attractions in and around Pretoria. I must just say, very interesting, when we brag about our city, we do say there's Table Mountain, then there's the Union Buildings, and somewhere in between there's Midland Park Shopping Center.
Akashka, I know your emphasis is more on the governance side, but just as we come to the end of our discussion, a person, I know you don't have to convince anyone to go to Cape Town, but if you were to sell the Western Cape to a potential visitor, what would you say?
We did a very nice campaign, and I will almost use the words for that campaign. It was hashtag no one does it better, and nowhere better, in fact. And I really must stick to that. It's so beautiful, the Western Cape. And in fact, I don't even want to just limit it to the Western Cape necessarily. South Africa, as the lady before said, South Africa is just such a beautiful country. And only when you travel overseas, you also it exposes you, and it makes you realize how beautiful a country and destination we're living in, and appreciate that. And the Western Cape, along with the weather, and we had a bit of a drought crisis. Now we're sitting with all our dams within the vicinity of Cape Town being above 80%. So that's also gone, and we just have beautiful, beautiful, glorious weather. Obviously, like you're constantly saying, Table Mountain, the beaches, the hiking, the nature, and then obviously cultural aspects to it. So there is nothing more to say. To sell it, it's a destination that sells itself.
Crystal, as experts at turning around growth, we have a grim picture right now. What kind of activities or activations can we undertake to make sure that we turn around the tourism picture in South Africa?
Okay. I want to talk about two markets, and it's things that often are not necessarily looked at. We always want to look at the sexy, foreign tourist market, or the new market, the Chinese market, etc. But let's just go back to something we have already. We have a very big visiting friends and relatives market, VFR market, both foreign as well as local. That is our biggest market, if you look at anything, purpose. And to me, if you harness that more and say, come visit come some back, more. So Ghana has it's the year of the return. So let's have something similar, because I do think we have a lot of visitors we can bring back quite fast, quite a bit of family. And a lot about tourism is socializing. It is the fun part. So most of what you do as you do tourism, you do activities or whatever, but in between, in the evenings, you socialize. You want to go to the restaurants, you socialize. You don't just go there to eat, you also go there to socialize. Obviously, the Western Cape, the local population go out a lot. They're physically out, and it's free. So it's free beaches, free driving up the coast, etc. And they make use of that quite a lot. We can definitely do that a lot more, I think, inland. We don't do it as much, is just to go out and experience our country, and it doesn't have to cost a lot just to go and socialize. There's a lot of festivals that happen, so I think the importance of events cannot be I cannot underscore it even more.
In fact, just speaking about the year of the return, some of those activations have been happening in Cape Town with tracing back the roots of slaves. Akashka, perhaps you can tell us what has been happening in that regard. Have you been part of that?
Unfortunately, I wasn't quite part of that specifically, but that was definitely part of our department doing it. I lead tourism safety in the department. But along with that, there's so many initiatives that we do. Like I mentioned, cradle of human culture, even the tracking back the slaves, which was actually just opened up the other week. Unfortunately, I can't give you more information on that. I wasn't personally hands-on and
it's an interesting one for our viewers to look into. So, Susan, what can people do in Tshwane this particular festive season, especially because people always have a sense that you've got to go out to the seas during the holidays, you can't be inland, but you're saying they can still have fun and stay inland.
How much time do you have?
Let's go.
Desiree, I specifically for Tshwane, obviously I'm the #1 Pretoria fan, but for our whole country, I think to just remind our visitors, when we travel somewhere else, we do a lot of research, we Google before, we have a little wish list of things we want to do, and then we sit in our own homes, and many of us might not have the resources to go on a big holiday this year, and we're already dreading those Facebook
What can you do on a
posts
small
coming
budget?
up. Do local things, stay local. We have the beautiful Dinukeng Big 5 Game Reserve where you can do game drives or you can do self-drive. We have beautiful parks, go for a picnic. We have malls that don't just have the shops, we have some beautiful flagship malls in Tshwane where you can, there's so much entertainment going on, not necessarily just spending money. We have amazing restaurants for the foodies. Did you know we have the best female chef in Africa right here in Tshwane? We have markets is another firm favorite for me. We have a wonderful market in the city centre, bringing a bit of life and feet back there, because I think if we really take that short left and travel local, it will also end up improving the safety and the security instead of sitting behind our walls and watching what everyone else is doing. Get out there, explore, do your research and discover something new.
And meet new people.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Chriselle, just in terms of the numbers again, how do the different provinces fare in terms of how they're able to attract tourists, local and foreign, and also the safety levels?
Okay, so I think safety is an issue all over. So we can't say that necessarily the smaller provinces or the cities are maybe unsafer. We also have had incidents in rural areas, so obviously it can happen anywhere. So from that perspective, I think it is more of an equilibrium. From a numbers perspective, obviously the Western Cape is a fairly big number. Gauteng actually gets a big market because it's a big hub. It's a big transportation hub as well, and we want to. In Gauteng, they want to extend that visitation rather than just a fly through and a stay over one night destination. But it is also a big business tourism destination and a business travel destination. So it has that. KwaZulu-Natal has the biggest domestic market. So it has always been a big domestic market. It's a big province. So there is obviously quite a large diverse product that you can go to. So it does quite well. Unfortunately, I think provinces such as the Northern Cape probably has the smallest tourism market. It is also a big province, but not as much tourism. Probably you have to drive quite far, I think, to interact with it. So definitely different levels, but there's a lot that we need to do. Our president put this really audacious target of 21 million tourists by 2030. It's doubling what we have at the moment. That's a foreign tourist number. And that means we have to grow by 6% compound until 2030. We haven't quite gotten with growth there, but countries like Ethiopia has just had 48% growth. So you know what, the market is there. The market is there. I think it's just for us to go out there again and do it together.
Akanksha, is the Western Cape up to this challenge?
Absolutely. I mean, we have got some very, very successful programs. One of our most successful programs is the Cape Town Access Project, where we are getting direct flights. What also we find is that how to now make the Western Cape like a one route, one stop destination. How do we come directly? And so, for example, the market to Europe and especially the market to the USA, it's such a long distance fly. How do we get them directly? And now we have got another flight from United Airlines that is starting directly to Cape Town. So it's those kind of initiatives, along with our season readiness plans, where we're very actively combating safety and security issues in the Western Cape, which actually makes the destination attractive and will bring in more.
How has tourism been affected by the strike at SAA in the Western Cape?
Oh yes, we all saw that. I believe that it's been widespread not just with tourism, it's widespread for our economy all over the country. So that's definitely been a hampering issue, and anything in that space she gets into, we definitely need. the country collaborate.
Crystal, what kind of, I know it's too early to talk about the impacts, but just forecasting, what kind of impacts can we foresee?
For the impact
For the
of SAA
space
or
for the
just
SAA strike?
generally? Look, it's definitely going to have an impact. I think something we forget though is that if we look at foreign market perception of having a strike, they strike all over the world, airlines strike. So it's not necessarily seen
But
as
it has a direct
bad
impact
thing
on
for
movement.
South Africa. But it has an impact on movement. A lot of those flights are booked, so the money is already rotated in the economy. They may get onto another airline. So what we're not getting is the impact lost of the people that haven't physically gotten maybe into the country. So the restaurants, etc. Accommodation is normally pre-booked, so that wouldn't necessarily have such a big impact.
Okay.
But it's more the shopping, the food, the whatever. That is where the spend is lost.
Ladies, we
to the
have
local
2
economy.
minutes. Olive, I'm going to start with you. Your closing remarks in terms of this holiday season and what South African or the people who go through to your establishment can expect.
Well, there's Zip Zap Circus, there is the ice rink, and there is also the fun company. There's also the rooftop fives aside. But most of all, I just want to thank you for the opportunity, and we are proud that we can actually push the agenda forward with social cohesion and creating beautiful experiences for South Africans together with tourism.
Stunning. Akanksha, the Western Cape?
So from the Western Cape, along with all the initiatives that I've actually mentioned to you, something else I want to speak about from a safety perspective, that we have deployed an extra unit, almost called a tourism law enforcement unit. These are proper armed officials that we've deployed across the tourism hotspot within the CBD. So this unit is going to be operational. It started last week already. They're doing excellent job with the tourist hotspot. And it's going to be operational right up to March 2020. And then we're going to see how as a strategy take forward for the next couple of years and just take that safety concerns that the tourist has away, along with everything else we're doing, whether it's communication or marketing, even assisting our tourist district. So yes,
the message for this particular holidaying season.
Desiree, for me, like I said, just to remind everyone, travel local, support local. Remember, SMMEs make up a huge part of our local job creation. We have some of the most creative, resourceful people in the world. Support local business and get out of the house.
And Christa?
Definitely from a job perspective, it's not just creating new jobs, it's also supporting existing jobs. Given that the industry hasn't had the greatest year, let's get out there and make the festivals. And every rand counts. So every, wherever it comes from, I think it's good for the industry. And make your visitors, get your visitors come. Tell your family to come, wherever they are, in the country or outside of the country, and do something with them. Go to a tourism attraction. Do something that you've never quite even yourself experienced
Ladies,
before.
to all of you, thank you so much for joining us this evening. This has been your Unfiltered. Wherever you're holidaying this festive season, we hope you do it safely and responsibly. I'm Desiree Chauke. Till next week, it's a bye-bye.